Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, looking back at 2025, a seismic shift in the Middle East brought about by the Trump administration. Hostages freed, groundbreaking deals struck with former Middle Eastern enemies, and Prime Minister Netanyahu forging an unprecedented partnership with the U.S. Plus, the deadly rise of anti-Semitism around the world. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this special edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. In our program today, we're looking back at 2025 and the tumultuous events that happened in Israel and the Middle East, politically, socially, culturally. There's a lot to talk about, but before we get to that, here's the latest from our CBN News Desk.
After their meeting in Mar-a-Lago, Florida, President Trump said there's very little difference in where he and Netanyahu stand on issues and where they want to go. Netanyahu agreed.
I think we have a partnership, if I can quote you, second to none. I think it's allowed us to do enormous things. He's achieved remarkable things in the Middle East because we work together. We talk about our ideas. Sometimes we have different ideas, but we work it out. And most of the time we see eye to eye.
As reports continue to emerge about Iran rebuilding its missile arsenal, President Trump indicated that another strike on Iran could be on the agenda.
I hope they're not trying to build up again, because if they are, we're going to have no choice but very quickly to eradicate that buildup.
Before their meeting, Trump told reporters that he would back another Israeli strike on Iran if necessary, but later added he wouldn't say they are close to another war with Iran.
Iran may be behaving badly. It hasn't been confirmed, but if it's confirmed, look, they know the consequences. Consequences will be very powerful, maybe more powerful than the last time.
Closer to Israel, Hamas has long passed its agreed-upon deadline to disarm. Trump says it will be horrible if they don't give up their weapons.
It's going to be really, really bad for them, and I don't want that to happen. But they made an agreement that they were going to disarm. And you couldn't blame Israel.
Before their meeting, Trump created some confusion when asked if Israeli President Isaac Herzog would pardon Netanyahu, who is accused of using his position to swap favors with influential benefactors.
I think he will. How do you not? He's a wartime prime minister who's a hero. How do you not give a pardon? I think it's a very hard thing not to do it. I spoke to the president, and he tells me it's on its way.
Herzog's office put out a statement shortly afterwards saying the two presidents hadn't spoken since the pardon request was submitted, and that a few weeks ago Herzog had spoken with a Trump representative. During that conversation, an explanation was provided regarding the stage of the process in which the request currently stands, and that any decision on the matter will be made in accordance with the established procedures. During Trump and Netanyahu's lunch, Israel announced it would award President Trump the Israel Prize for his tremendous contributions to Israel and the Jewish people. It's the first time the prize will be given to a non-Israeli since it began in 1953.
This reflects the overwhelming sentiment of Israelis across the spectrum. They appreciate what you've done to help Israel and to help our common battle against the terrorists and those who would destroy our civilization.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
2025 saw amazing changes in the Middle East. At this time last year, Israel was still deep in the war in Gaza, a shaky ceasefire with Hezbollah, and missiles coming from the Houthis in Yemen. Today, we'll be talking to our senior editor, John Waage, and our Middle East correspondent, Julie Stahl, to get their opinions on the events of 2025.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Joshua.
How are you?
Hey, good. This is Joshua Swanson, one of our latest news reporters.
Sorry to interrupt, but
yeah, okay.
I was listening to the show, and I just thought, look, you have so many good things to say.
Well, hopefully.
I would love to ask you and John and Julie the questions.
Okay.
Can we put you on the other side?
Like switch places?
Like right now.
Okay.
Just move
all right,
over
here we
there.
go.
Like this is what it's like to be a guest. Well, welcome to Jerusalem Dateline.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll do that. I'll ask the questions.
Okay. Sounds great.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Jerusalem Dateline. I'm here with our senior editor, John Waage, and our bureau chief, Chris Mitchell. Gentlemen, 2025 was a big year for U.S.-Israeli politics. John, what was one of your highlights?
Well, the biggest highlight, we probably could fill the whole segment with just January of 2025, but January of 2025, we got a new Congress, which automatically meant a changed Middle East. And then we had President Trump waiting in the wings to completely overturn the Biden administration of the last 4 years. So that was certainly a highlight. It was not only a changer in the U.S., but a world changer, and especially for Israel here in the middle of fighting a seven-front war.
So strange that that was only a year ago.
Yeah, it's really hard to
Chris,
imagine.
what about you? What are your
I
highlights?
think it would be the continuation of the seven-front war, and if there's the seven fronts: Hamas, Hezbollah, Judea and Samaria, Syrian militias in Iraq and Syria, Yemen, the Houthis, and then, of course, Iran. And I think the highlight of all that seven-front war was the 12-day war in June with Iran, something that we literally had been talking about for decades. I mean, and here we are, 12 days, and took out most of Iran's nuclear facilities. That, to me, was the highlight of the year.
Well, staying on that, Chris, the U.S. involvement in the peace negotiations, how did that shift things?
Well, it shifted dramatically. I mean, when they finally had the quote-unquote ceasefire with Gaza, and then we had, even in November 2024, we have the ceasefire with Hezbollah and Israel too. But they're shaky ceasefires. To me, what happened in both the November 2024 ceasefire, the other ceasefire with Gaza, and the 12-day war, they all seem to be just not allowing the war to complete, to finish. With Iran, with Hezbollah, and Hamas. It was like, think about World War II. The Allies are on the Rhine River. Oh, let's have a ceasefire, and but not go into Germany and have an unconditional surrender. We have had conditional surrenders on almost all fronts, and I think that leads us to things that we'll be looking forward to in our next program, what's coming in 2026.
Yeah, John, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump, it felt like a bit of a bromance was developed in 2025. What are your thoughts?
It did, especially, Joshua, when you compare it to just a year earlier, 2024, you had the Prime Minister's office besieged on all fronts, including the White House, where the Biden administration was calling for Netanyahu to be replaced shortly after he'd been elected. And then you had, so the replacement of Donald Trump immediately, Netanyahu, before Trump was even president, was invited to Mar-a-Lago, and after that we had 4 meetings, and before the end of the year there will be 5 of Netanyahu and Trump. So it completely changed everything, and there's certainly a much higher level of respect on both sides of the Atlantic. But you know, there's still questions, and there are still, it's not quite a full bromance. It's more 2 great leaders, really, who are taking the measure of what each one wants, and really are working together to change the world. We'll see if that continues in the year ahead, but for now, it's been pretty smooth sailing, especially compared to almost every other president, and with Trump.
That was really evident with Trump's visit to the Knesset. That was an unbelievable situation. Chris, I wanted to ask about Operation Midnight Hammer. The U.S. bombed Iran. That, I mean, that has to be a highlight of 2025.
Yeah, it certainly was. And going back to, you know, the election of President Trump, that wouldn't have happened under President Biden. Very unlikely that it would happen. And that really set back the Iran nuclear facility that had been, you know, an existential threat to Israel. And I would say, too, with the seven-front war, with the 12-day war, if you look back, it really has been miraculous what Israel has been able to do to beat back what's called this ring of fire around Israel. All the proxies of Iran, almost everyone has been degraded to a dramatic impact. So I think we have to recognize that there's been a really miraculous, you know, effects of these wars in 2025.
Almost prophetic.
Almost prophetic, indeed.
John, final thoughts?
It's a time of uncertainty. It's been an amazing transition, and it's difficult with all the things that are still going on. We're only in phase 1 of the Gaza deal. What happens after that is really, I think there's still a lot of nervousness about it here. Is President Trump full-fledged committed to a one-state solution in the Middle East, a two-state solution? We still don't know in 2025 what the outcome of the disarming Hamas. All those things are still up in the air. So, and you see Hezbollah and others trying to rebuild, even during the year 2025. So it's still it's not over. It's not peace has come to the Middle East like President Trump said.
Yeah, it feels like we're in a bit of a middle stage.
Yeah,
peace,
exactly.
But is it real peace?
Yeah.
Well, when we come back, we'll bring in correspondent Julie Stahl. Here's some of her thoughts. So stick around. Welcome back. We're here with our Bureau Chief, Chris Mitchell, and our Middle East correspondent, Julie Stahl. It's good to just have a conversation with you. You are a very wise person, and I'm excited to ask you this first question. What difference do you feel, Julie, the election of President Trump made here on the ground in Israel?
It was huge. It was huge. I think the Israeli people, they were desperate. They were feeling like they didn't have anybody backing them, any friends, and there it was. President Trump became their friend. He's inviting them to the White House. And I mean, how many just regular people get invited to the White House? And, he would really listen to them, the families of the hostages. He really listened. And it was very special.
It was a weird moment. There were banners of President Trump everywhere, all over the city, welcoming him to office.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Yeah.
Chris, the hostage situation continues to evolve. What is your take in terms of the hostages and where it stands?
Since October 7th, the hostages have been sort of the emotional burden, I think, that all Israelis carried. We had the opportunity to be there the night before. All the 20 living hostages were released because of the Trump peace plan. And that released, I think, such a huge burden on the Israeli people. And they carried each of them in their hearts. We saw banners all over the country, and certainly here in the city as well. But to see them, that I think released the people of Israel and Jews worldwide, as well as literally millions of people around the world that were carrying them in their hearts and praying for them.
It was a historic moment, Julie. How did you feel when the hostages were released?
Well, it really was. It was like a relief and a release for the people, and then to listen and to hear what they said when they came out. I mean, those people lived in hell for, some of them for 2 years, the last batch that came out, and some of them for a year and a half. I don't know how they could stand 10 minutes in those tunnels, but, and they came out with testimonies of how, they wouldn't convert to Islam. They were starved and they still wouldn't take it just to say a Muslim prayer. They, how they prayed to God every day, and they really sensed God's presence. They didn't maybe use those terms, but they really made a connection with God, and I thought it was really special how they came out, and how they Eli Sharabi, we interviewed him. It was
a great interview.
He was amazing, talked about how he got the young men that were in the tunnel with him every day to think what one good thing that happened. And then by the end, they were like coming up with 5 good things that had happened that day. And I was thinking what could you possibly think of in a tunnel that was good? But they came up with things, and it was special.
I think it was a testament. People prayed.
Yes.
And God answered those prayers.
Yes.
The fact that they came out in their right mind, much less testifying to God's presence in the tunnels, was just miraculous.
I mean, just personally meeting Eli was a highlight for me. What an interview. If you haven't seen it, please check out our YouTube channel and watch Julie's interview with Eli Sharabi. Chris, you've probably interviewed Ambassador Huckabee 15 times this year. Everywhere we go and he sees you, it's, hey, it's Chris again. Yeah. You guys have a really special relationship. What impact do you feel he's had here in Israel as the ambassador?
Well, if there was anyone chosen for such a time as this to be the U.S. ambassador to Israel, with such an experience of being here more than 100 times, even before he was taken. The people of Israel love him. He comes with a biblical understanding of the land, and he can communicate that to the people of Israel. and be that bridge builder between the United States and Israel. Just a remarkable choice of a man, like a man for all seasons, just at this time.
Yeah, for such a time as this.
Yeah.
Julie, how do you feel the politics have changed this year here in Israel?
Well, I think that also has a lot to do with President Trump's election because, everything was a lot against Bibi Netanyahu and everything, and Trump came in and said, hey, he's not such a bad guy, and had a good relationship with him, listens to him, respects him, and that kind of shifted things, I think, in people's minds. They might still not like him, but they're not so anti-Bibi, and it has made a huge difference this year.
Yeah, Chris, you put in a lot of time here in Israel for several decades.
Yeah.
How would you compare this year politically to previous years here in Israel?
Well, I think it's remarkable that Benjamin Netanyahu has been able to hold his government together through a war, and if he may make actually the full term, which is just remarkable here in Israeli politics, which hardly ever anyone goes through the full term. And I would mention two other things, Joshua, what happened this year was the information war. Not only the war on the ground, but the information war was key and critical. That has fueled this rise of anti-Semitism like we've never seen it before. Some people compare it to the 1930s, and we're seeing it not only the left, where it's become institutionalized, but we're seeing it on the right. So I think those two things are major things that have happened in 2025.
Yeah, well, thank you for letting me switch seats with you and ask questions. I know I learned a lot, and hopefully the audience did too.
And when we come back, I'll be speaking and summing up things with John and Julie up next.
Israelis are strong, but years of a multi-front war would take a toll on any population. Our partners make it possible for CBN Israel to be on the ground every day, helping those in need with meals, housing, bomb shelters, medical emergencies, trauma therapy, and more.
I was not tortured. I was not bound with chains like others, but still, it's not easy. The trauma is deep. We have to learn to live with the trauma. Now I'm back on the kibbutz, and there are new challenges here. First of all, I said that without a security room, I'm not coming back. Thanks to your donation, I have a safe room and I have a home. And I came home. I want to thank CBN for their support. The gift they gave me is something I will remember for the rest of my life. I wish we could meet so I could thank you personally.
If you want to be a part of this, go to cbnisrael.org. Thanks.
Welcome back. I'm here in our studio with John and Julie, and Joshua did a great job interviewing us. And we're going to sum up some things for 2025. John, first to you, what's your thoughts? 2025, how could you sum it up?
A year of tremendous advancement here in the Middle East in terms of military. I mean, it's the lines that have been up for more than a century are starting to change. We don't know what direction it's all going to head, but the military resistance against Israel has been set back a great deal. The other thing that doesn't get as much play is there seems to be a tension within the Trump administration on what to do next. The one state, two state, and also just the intensity that we've mentioned a little earlier about the rise of anti-Semitism coming from the right in the United States and what influence that is happening. The pastors that recently came here to Jerusalem, and they went back and immediately were hit with a bot, just an attack, a cyber attack. We don't know if there's going to be further attacks against people who support Israel, and so it's kind of it's an in-between. The cake is only half baked right now, as far as 2025 is concerned.
Julie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think also the anti-Semitism it's shocking, but to be expected maybe. I think also, to see, I asked the rabbi of the Western Wall if he felt like people had drawn closer to God in these last 2 years, and he said definitely. And I think that's really a big thing. And I think just there's definitely things going on in the society here. People are trying to get back on their feet, although there's so much unrest kind of out there. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. But I feel like people are trying to recover after these last 2 years, and that's where we're at.
I would say, being here since 2000, this has been the most intense 2 years plus than I think any of us can imagine what it was like. And momentous, historic, sometimes biblical events happening almost regularly. Yeah. And, it's hard to keep up. As journalists, we're trying to keep up, but it's been quite a task. John and Julie, how can people pray for this coming year and pray for Israel now?
Well, I think mentioning this word resilience also, that the people of Israel would continue to bounce back, that they would not allow themselves to be divided. They're going to always have different opinions, but not to let that spirit of division come in that was there before October 7th. And I think just, that also that they would be aware of what's going on around them in this time.
John?
For people around the world, I can speak as an American. I don't think that the nations who are going to be judged by how they treat Israel, you can't really ignore what's going on anymore. And so in the churches and the pulpits of the United States, I would say people in the pews, be praying for your pastor, be praying for people to speak out with a clearer voice and to be praying for the peace of Jerusalem and for Israel. It's not something that can be ignored for much longer after this seven-front war. Things are going to change, and they're going to continue to change. And each person in each nation needs to be praying that their nation would see through the biblical lens, through how the Lord looks at this land, this people, and what He's doing, His plan for the future.
Yeah, and I think the fact that there were 1,000 pastors that came here right at the end of the year really set a tone, I think, of where the church needs to be, where it is now, and where it's going to be going. And as you say, the Lord's going to judge the nations of how they treat Israel. John, Julie, great to be with you. We'll look forward to 2026, but great review of this year. And we'll be back in another show coming up for 2026. But thanks for joining us for Jerusalem Dateline.